For years I told myself, one day, I'll do it. One day, when the kids are older, when life slows down, when I have more time, when I feel ready, then I'll chase my dreams. And then one day, I looked in the mirror and realized that one day never came. I was still waiting. And worse, I was running out of time. Welcome to No More Waiting, a journey to self-belief. Today, we're going to talk about the moment I realized I had spent years waiting for a perfect time that didn't exist, and the wake-up call that changed everything. I remember the exact moment it hit me. It wasn't some dramatic revelation. No fireworks, no lightning bolt of wisdom. It was ordinary. I was in the kitchen, packing my kids' lunchboxes. My youngest was struggling with her homework at the table. She sighed and said, "Mom, I'll do it later. I'm not ready yet." It was such an innocent thing for a child to say. But something about it hit me right in the gut, because I realized she was repeating the same excuse I had been telling myself for years. I'll do it later. I'm not ready yet. I looked at her and said, what if you just try? Even if you don't feel ready. And right after I said those words, my breath caught in my throat, because I knew I wasn't just talking to her, I was talking to myself. I sat down that night and let myself face a truth I had been avoiding for years. I had wasted so much time, not because I didn't have dreams, but because I had convinced myself that I wasn't ready to chase them. I thought about all the times I said I wanted to write, to start something new, to change my life, but I had always pushed it to someday. And suddenly I asked myself, if not now, then when? And you know what scared me the most? I didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, there was never going to be a perfect time. Life was never going to pause and hand me an open window. I had to create that window myself. I used to believe that the perfect moment would come when things slowed down, when I had more money, when I felt more confident. But here's the reality. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. So that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I wasn't going to let fear, doubt, or my own excuses keep me stuck. And I want to ask you, are you waiting too? Are you telling yourself one day? Are you pushing your dreams, your growth, your happiness to some imaginary future? Because if you are, this is your wake-up call, just like that moment in my kitchen was mine. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to feel completely ready. You just have to start, right now, with whatever you have, however small it feels. So here's what I want you to do. Right after this episode ends, take one small step towards something you've been putting off. Send that email. Sign up for that class. Write one paragraph of the book you've been wanting to start. Whatever it is, do something, because action creates momentum. And momentum, it changes everything. This is the beginning of our journey together. No more waiting. No more someday. Just today. Just now. Just taking that first, imperfect but powerful step forward.
Have you ever looked back and wondered, what if I had started 5 years ago? Where would I be today? I used to think that question was harmless, but then I realized, every time I asked it, I wasn't just reflecting, I was punishing myself. I was carrying the weight of regret. In the last episode, we talked about that wake-up call, the moment I realized I was waiting for a perfect time that didn't exist. But today, I want to talk about something heavier, something that keeps so many of us stuck, the weight of regret. And more importantly, how to let it go and step into the power of now. One night, not too long ago, I sat down and did something dangerous. I let my mind wander back to all the years I spent waiting, the years I spent doubting myself, the years I wasted thinking I wasn't ready. I thought about all the times I said I'd start next year, how next year turned into 5, 10, 20. And suddenly it hit me. If I had started when I first had the dream, I would have already been there. That realization was like a punch to the gut. I could almost hear my own voice whispering, "You wasted so much time. What's the point of starting now?" And for a moment, I believed it. I felt stuck, buried under the weight of regret. I almost gave up before I even began. Regret is a strange thing. It convinces us that because we didn't start earlier, it's too late to start now. And that, my friend, is a lie. Think about it. If you look back 5 years and wish you had started then, what do you think your future self will say 5 years from now? Probably the same thing. I realized something that night. The only way to stop regretting the past is to take action in the present. I had 2 choices: either sit in regret and let another 5 years slip away, or take one small step now and change the course of my future. And when I looked at it that way, the choice was clear. So here's what I did. Instead of drowning in guilt over the time I lost, I asked myself, what can I do today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today. And the answer wasn't some massive, life-changing action. It was small. I picked up a notebook and wrote down one goal. Just one. And then I took the tiniest step toward it. And you know what happened? The weight of regret started lifting, because regret loses its power the moment you take action. I realized that the past only defines you if you let it. But the present is yours to shape. So now I want to ask you something. What is one thing you wish you had started years ago? Now take a deep breath, because I'm about to tell you something that changed my life. It is not too late. You are not too far behind. And you do not have to carry the weight of regret anymore. Right now, you have a choice. You can keep looking back, or you can take one step forward, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if it feels insignificant. Because that one step, that's what breaks the cycle. That's what turns regret into power.
What if I told you that the biggest transformations in life don't come from grand gestures or perfect plans? They come from the smallest steps. The tiny, almost invisible decisions that shift everything. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to see the entire path ahead. You just need to take one step. In today's episode, we're talking about the most powerful lesson I've learned. The smallest step can create the biggest shift in your life. For years, I thought that change only happened in big, dramatic ways. I believed that to really change my life, I needed a major breakthrough, a sign, a moment of clarity, or a perfectly planned roadmap. And because of that belief, I stayed stuck. I kept waiting for the right circumstances, the right motivation, the right everything. But let me tell you a story about the day I realized how wrong I was. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. The kids had just left for school. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, scrolling through my phone, feeling that familiar frustration with myself. I kept thinking, I should be doing something. I should be working toward my dreams, but I don't even know where to start. Then, for no reason at all, I opened a blank document on my laptop, and I wrote one sentence. Just one. That's it. That's all I did. I didn't write a full plan. I didn't figure out the whole process. I just started. And something happened. That tiny action, that single sentence, broke through months, maybe even years, of inaction. Because suddenly, I wasn't just thinking about doing something. I was doing it. Here's what I learned. We don't take action because we feel motivated. We feel motivated because we take action. That small step rewired something in my brain. It gave me a taste of movement, of progress. And the next day, I wrote another sentence, and then another. Before I knew it, I had momentum. And momentum? That's when everything changes. When you take one small step, no matter how insignificant it seems, you prove to yourself that you can move forward. And that belief is what keeps you going. A lot of people get stuck because they think if they can't take a big step, it's not worth taking at all. They say, if I can't go to the gym for an hour, why bother? If I can't start my business today, what's the point? If I can't do it perfectly, why even try? And to that I say, start messy, start small, start anyway. Because one tiny action is better than 1,000 thoughts about taking action. So here's my challenge for you today. Take the smallest possible step towards something you've been putting off. Not a big leap, not a full plan, just one tiny action. If you want to get healthier, drink 1 glass of water. If you want to start a business, write down one idea. If you want to learn a skill, watch a 5-minute tutorial. Because that tiny step will do something powerful. It will move you out of waiting mode and into action mode. And once you're in motion, everything changes. What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I try and nothing changes? Sound familiar? I used to live my life trapped in a cycle of what ifs. Every time I thought about taking a step forward, a new doubt would creep in, stopping me before I even started. But one day, I asked myself a different question. What if I succeed? And that changed everything. Welcome back to No More Waiting, a journey to self-belief. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how what-if thinking is keeping you stuck and how to finally break free. The human brain is wired to protect us from danger. It's why we overthink, why we hesitate, why we feel fear. But the problem is, our brain doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined failure. So every time I thought about trying something new, starting a business, speaking up, taking a risk, my brain flooded me with what ifs. What if I'm terrible at this? What if people judge me? What if I'm wasting my time? And every time I listened to those thoughts, I stayed exactly where I was, stuck in the same place, trapped by fear of the unknown. I remember the exact moment I realized what if thinking was controlling my life. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, watching someone talk about how they built their dream career. And instead of feeling inspired, I felt something else. Resentment. Not at them, but at myself. Because deep down, I knew I was capable of more. But I was too afraid to try. Then a thought hit me like a lightning bolt. What if I'm making this harder than it needs to be? What if, instead of assuming the worst, I assumed the best? What if I stopped predicting failure and started imagining success? And just like that, everything shifted. Here's something I want you to understand. What if thinking isn't the problem? The problem is which direction you let it take you. Your brain is already asking, what if? So why not make it work for you instead of against you? Instead of, what if I fail? Try. What if I succeed? Instead of, what if people judge me? Try. What if I inspire someone? Instead of, what if I'm not good enough? Try. What if I learn and grow along the way? The thoughts you choose to focus on will determine your reality. And the more you practice flipping the what ifs, the more you'll start to believe in what's possible. Fear and doubt will always be there. That voice in your head that whispers, "What if it goes wrong?" It's not going to disappear overnight. But you don't have to let it control you. Because here's the truth. The people who succeed aren't the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who feel the fear and do it anyway. They ask, "What if I try? What if I grow? What if this changes my life?" And that's what I want for you. So here's my challenge for you today. The next time a negative what if pops into your head, flip it. Turn it into a positive what if. Say it out loud. Write it down. Because when you change your thoughts, you change your life. And I promise you, your best what if is waiting for you on the other side of action. You're not good enough. You don't have what it takes. Who do you think you are to do this? That voice in your head, you know the one. The voice that questions everything you do. The voice that makes you hesitate. The voice that keeps you small. It took me years to realize that my biggest obstacle wasn't the world outside. It was the voice inside. Today we're talking about the inner critic, the enemy within, and how to finally silence it before it stops you from living the life you were meant for. Let's be honest, if someone else spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would you be friends with them? Think about that for a moment. If a stranger walked up to you and said, "You're not talented enough. You're too old. You'll never succeed." Would you listen? Would you let them control your choices? You'd shut them down. You'd walk away. You wouldn't let them dictate your future. And yet, when our own minds tell us these things, we believe them. We absorb them as truth. But here's something that changed my life. That voice? It's not telling you the truth. It's telling you a story, and you get to rewrite it. I remember the first time I truly became aware of my inner critic. I was sitting in front of my computer, staring at a blank page. I wanted to start something, a blog, a book, a project. But every time I reached for the keyboard, my mind filled with doubt. You're not a writer. No one will care. You're going to embarrass yourself. And just like that, I closed the laptop. I walked away. And I did. Nothing. But later that night, I asked myself, where's this voice coming from? And I realized it wasn't really mine. It was an echo of things I had heard in my past. A teacher's criticism, a moment of failure, a fear that someone, somewhere, might judge me. I had spent years letting an old, outdated script run my life. But just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't mean you have to believe it. So how do you stop the inner critic from controlling you? Here's what I've learned. You don't fight it. You reframe it. Let me show you how. Step 1. Name it. First, give your inner critic a name. Sounds silly, right? But trust me, it works. When that voice starts tearing you down, call it out. Oh, that's just negative Nancy talking again. Or, there goes fearful Fred. When you separate yourself from the voice, you take away its power. Step 2. Challenge it. Next, when a critical thought pops up, don't accept it as truth. Question it. If your mind says, "You're not good enough," ask, "Says who? Where's the proof?" Most of the time you'll realize there isn't any proof. It's just fear in disguise. Step 3. Replace it. Here's the game changer. Every time your inner critic says something negative, replace it with a positive truth. Instead of, "I'm not smart enough," say, I am capable of learning anything I put my mind to, instead of, no one will care about what I have to say. Say, someone out there needs to hear this. Little by little, you retrain your brain, and the more you do it, the quieter that inner critic becomes. One day, I decided to test this theory. I sat down at my desk again, opened my laptop, and waited. And sure enough, the voice came. You're wasting your time. This won't work. But this time, instead of shutting the laptop, I answered back. That's not true. I am allowed to try. I am allowed to learn. I am allowed to take up space. And then, I wrote my first paragraph. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But I did it. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer under the control of my inner critic. I had taken back my power. So here's your challenge today. Pay attention to the voice in your head. The next time it tries to bring you down, don't just listen. Challenge it. Ask yourself, is this true? Or is this just fear talking? And then, replace it with a thought that empowers you instead of holding you back. Because the truth is, you are capable. You are worthy. And the only thing standing in your way is a voice you don't have to believe anymore. I'll start when I have more time. I just need to be more prepared. I'll do it when things settle down. Sound familiar? For years I told myself the same thing, that I was waiting for the perfect time to start. But here's what I didn't realize. Waiting wasn't protecting me. It was trapping me. Today, we're exposing one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves, the myth of the perfect time. And by the end of this episode, you'll see why waiting is just another way of saying never. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked back on your life and thought, I wish I had started sooner? I used to say that all the time, about my career, my health, my dreams. I was always waiting for the stars to align, for the right moment to appear. And then one day, I had a realization that shook me to my core. The right moment doesn't exist. Life is never going to pause and hand you a neatly wrapped opportunity with a bow on top. There will always be obstacles, distractions, and reasons to wait. And if you're waiting for the perfect time to start, you might be waiting forever. I remember the exact day I stopped believing in the perfect time. It wasn't because my schedule cleared up. It wasn't because I suddenly felt confident. It was because I looked at my life and realized something terrifying. I had been saying, I'll start soon, for 10 years. 10 years of waiting, 10 years of making excuses, 10 years of convincing myself that one day would magically arrive. And then I thought, what if I had started 10 years ago? Where would I be today? The answer hit me like a punch to the gut. I could have been living my dream. I could have built something amazing. But instead, I had wasted time waiting. And that's when I made a decision. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not until I felt ready. Not until my circumstances were perfect. I was starting. Messy, imperfect, unprepared, but starting. One of the biggest reasons we wait? We think we need to be ready. Let me tell you a secret. No one ever feels ready. Not truly. Not fully. Every successful person you admire, they started before they were ready. They stepped into the unknown without a perfect plan, because they knew something most people don't. Readiness isn't something you have before you start. Readiness is something you become by starting. The act of doing creates the feeling of being ready. So how do you move past the myth of the perfect time? Here's how. Step 1. Shrink the timeline. Stop thinking about starting someday. Commit to starting this week, even if it's small, even if it's uncomfortable. Step 2. Take immediate action. If you're waiting for things to settle down, stop. Take one small action today. Sign up for that class. Make that phone call. Write that first sentence. Step 3. Embrace imperfection. You will never have a perfect plan, and that's okay. Action beats perfection every time. Just start and let the rest unfold as you go. The day I stopped waiting was the day my life changed. Not because I had everything figured out, not because I was suddenly fearless, but because I finally understood the only perfect time is now. And if you're waiting for some magical moment to give you permission, this is it. This is your sign. This is your wake-up call. Start today. Start messy. Start scared. Just start. So here's your challenge today. Identify one thing you've been putting off because you're waiting for the right time, and take a step toward it today. Not tomorrow. Today. Because 5 years from now, you're either going to look back proud that you started, or regretful that you didn't. The choice is yours. What if I fail? What if I try and it doesn't work? What if I embarrass myself? For the longest time, failure felt like the worst possible outcome, like something to avoid at all costs. If I couldn't guarantee success, why even try? But then, I realized something life-changing. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the path to it. Every person who has ever succeeded has failed first. Every step forward includes missteps, and the only way to truly fail is to never start at all. In today's episode, we're breaking down the fear of failure, because once you see it for what it really is, it loses its power over you. I remember my first big failure, the one that shook me. I had finally built up the courage to take action on something I had been putting off for years. I put my heart into it, hours of work, late nights, and then it flopped. No one cared. No one noticed. It felt like I had poured everything into something that didn't matter. And the voice in my head started up again. See? I told you this wouldn't work. You should have never tried. I wanted to quit. I almost did. But then I had another thought. What if this wasn't a failure? What if this was just part of the process? Somewhere along the way, we were taught that failure means we did something wrong. That if we fail, we should stop, turn back, and never try again. But look at any successful person. Athletes, writers, business owners, inventors. Every single one of them failed before they succeeded. Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. Oprah, fired from her first TV job. Walt Disney, told he lacked imagination. The difference between them and the people who never made it? They didn't let failure stop them. They let it guide them. They didn't take it as a sign to quit. They took it as a lesson to grow. Here's the shift that changed everything for me. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's proof that you're in motion. Think about it. The only way to truly fail is to do nothing, to never try, to sit on the sidelines and wonder what if. But if you're failing, that means you're in the game. You're trying, you're learning, you're growing. So instead of thinking, I failed, I should stop, try this. This didn't work. What can I learn from it? Because the people who succeed aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail fast, learn fast, and keep going. Do you know what's actually riskier than failing? Playing it safe? Because when you avoid failure, you also avoid growth. You stay in your comfort zone, never pushing yourself, never testing your limits. And one day, you wake up and realize you didn't just avoid failure, you avoided living. I would rather fail 100 times than live with the regret of never trying. Because at least when I fail, I know I'm alive. I know I'm learning. I know I'm moving forward. So here's your challenge today. I want you to redefine failure in your mind. Instead of seeing it as a dead end, start seeing it as data, information, a stepping stone to success. And most importantly, don't let the fear of failure stop you from taking action. Failing is not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is never trying at all.
Why is it that some people set goals and actually follow through, while others start strong and then fall back into old patterns? For the longest time, I thought success was about motivation, that if I just had enough motivation, I'd finally take action. But then I realized something. Motivation fades. Willpower runs out. The real key to lasting change: identity.
If you don't believe you're the kind of person who takes action, you'll always struggle to follow through. But when you shift your identity, when you start seeing yourself differently, everything else changes with it. In today's episode, we're talking about how to go from a doubter to a doer by shifting your identity. Because once you change how you see yourself, you change how you show up in the world.
I want you to think about someone who is really consistent, someone who works out every day or writes every morning or always follows through on their commitments. They don't wake up every morning and say, "I wonder if I should do this today." They don't rely on motivation. They don't question it. Why? Because their actions are tied to their identity. A runner doesn't try to run. They are a runner. A writer doesn't hope to write. They are a writer. And this is the key. Your brain will always work to stay consistent with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, guess what? You'll procrastinate. If you see yourself as someone who always starts but never finishes, that's what you'll do. But if you shift your identity, if you start seeing yourself as the kind of person who takes action, follows through, and shows up, you'll start acting like it. Not because of motivation, but because of who you believe you are. I remember the moment this clicked for me. I had spent years saying, I want to be a writer. But I never actually wrote. I wanted to, but every time I sat down, I doubted myself. I'd tell myself, I'm not really a writer. I'm just someone trying to write. But then one day, I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if I just decided to be a writer? What if I stopped waiting for permission and started acting like the person I wanted to become? So I made a small shift. Every morning, instead of thinking, I should write today, I started saying, I am a writer. Writers write. And something happened. It became easier. Because I wasn't forcing myself anymore, I was just living out my identity. And that's when I realized, your actions follow your identity. So how do you change your identity when you don't feel like the person you want to be yet? Step 1. Decide who you want to be. Instead of focusing on what you want to do, ask yourself, who is the kind of person who would already be doing this? Do you want to be someone who exercises consistently? Then start saying, I am someone who moves my body every day. Want to be someone who follows through on goals? Then start saying, I am someone who finishes what I start. Decide. Even before you believe it fully, your actions will follow. Step 2. Take small identity-confirming actions. Once you decide who you want to be, prove it to yourself with small actions. If you want to be a writer, write one sentence. If you want to be an entrepreneur, make one small business move today. If you want to be a confident speaker, practice saying one sentence out loud. Each time you take a small action, You're reinforcing your new identity, and over time, it becomes who you are. Step 3. Eliminate the old story. Most of us hold on to old stories about who we are. I'm just not disciplined. I always quit things. I'm not the kind of person who can succeed. You have to let go of those stories, because as long as you hold on to them, you'll keep proving them true. Start telling a new story. Start believing a new version of yourself. And soon enough, you become that person. Most people think success is about setting goals and forcing themselves to follow through. But the real secret? It's about identity. Once you shift how you see yourself, everything else follows. You don't try anymore. You just are. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait. You don't have to achieve some big milestone to start seeing yourself differently. You can decide today, right now, to become the person who takes action. And once you do, everything changes. So here's your challenge today. Write down one sentence that describes the person you're becoming. Not I want to be, but I am. I'm a person who takes action. I'm someone who follows through. I'm a person who doesn't wait for the perfect time. Say it, believe it, and then prove it to yourself with one small action today. Because you're not just someone who wants change, you're someone who makes it happen. You've taken the first steps. You've challenged self-doubt, stopped waiting for the perfect time, and begun shifting your identity. But now comes the hardest part, keeping the momentum going. Because, let's be honest, starting is exciting, but staying consistent, that's where most people struggle. So today, we're talking about how to build unstoppable momentum. How to keep showing up, even on the hard days, even when motivation fades, even when life gets in the way. Because once you have momentum, everything gets easier. And that's exactly what we're going to create today. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to push a heavy object when it's standing still? But once it starts moving, it picks up speed. It almost feels effortless. That's momentum. When you're at a standstill, everything feels hard. Every action feels like a battle. But once you start moving consistently, the effort drops. The action becomes automatic. And that's the goal, not just to start, but to keep moving until success becomes second nature. Because once you build momentum, you won't need motivation. You'll just keep going. I remember the moment I almost lost my momentum. I had been showing up every day, writing, taking action, making progress. And then life happened. A stressful week, a family emergency, a few days off turned into a week, then 2, and suddenly that old voice in my head came creeping back. See, you always quit. You never follow through. And for a moment I believed it. I almost gave up, but then I realized something. I didn't fail. I just stopped moving, and I could start again. So I did. And that was the moment I learned the most important rule of momentum. Never let a pause turn into a full stop. So how do you make sure you don't lose momentum? How do you keep showing up, even on the days when you don't feel like it? Most people think consistency means doing a lot every single day. But the truth is, doing a little is better than doing nothing. If you can't go to the gym for an hour, do 5 push-ups. If you don't have time to write a full page, write 1 sentence. If you're overwhelmed, take 1 small step instead of stopping completely. Because keeping the habit alive is more important than doing it perfectly. One of the best ways to keep momentum is to make a rule. No 0 days. That means every single day you do something, even if it's tiny, even if it's just 1% effort. Because even a little progress is better than none. When you do this, your brain stays in motion. You never fully stop, and that's the secret to long-term success. Most people lose momentum because they only focus on the big goal, and when progress feels slow, they give up. But the trick is to fall in love with the process. Instead of thinking, I have to reach the finish line, start thinking, I am the kind of person who shows up every day. When you love the process, success becomes inevitable. One of the biggest mistakes I used to make, I only celebrated the big milestones. But real momentum comes from celebrating tiny wins. Every time you take action, recognize it. Every step forward, acknowledge it. Because tiny wins compound into massive results. You don't need a giant breakthrough to stay motivated. You just need to keep stacking small wins, one on top of the other. And when you do, you become unstoppable. So here's your challenge today. Pick something you're working on and ask yourself, what is one small step I can take today to keep my momentum alive? Not a big step, not a perfect step, just one tiny action to keep the movement going. Because the only way you fail is if you stop. And as long as you're moving forward, even slowly, you're winning. Every action we take, or don't take, leaves a mark. It doesn't just shape our own lives, it shapes the lives of those around us. For years, I thought my inaction only affected me. That waiting, hesitating, and doubting myself was my own private struggle. But I was wrong. Because the truth is, when we choose courage, we don't just set ourselves free. We set an example for everyone watching. This journey we've been on together, it's bigger than just you and me. It's about leaving behind a legacy of action, growth, and self-belief. In today's final episode, we're talking about why your transformation matters more than you think. Because when you take action, you don't just change your own life. You change the lives of others too. I used to believe that my dreams were just mine, that my actions or my failures only affected me. But then one day, something happened that changed my entire perspective. My daughter came up to me while I was writing. She looked at me, her big eyes full of curiosity, and asked, "Mom, are you writing your book?" I laughed and said, "Kind of. I'm just trying to figure it out." And she smiled and said, "That's cool. I think I want to write a book one day too." That moment hit me like a wave. Because for years, I had been telling myself that I was just figuring things out, that I was still getting ready. But to her, I was a writer. I was someone taking action. And because she saw me doing it, she believed she could too. That's when I realized our actions aren't just about us. They create ripples. They inspire. They change what others believe is possible. Right now, whether you realize it or not, someone is watching you. Your kids, your friends, your coworkers, your community. And the way you live your life, it teaches them something. If you keep waiting, doubting yourself, and holding back, you teach them that it's okay to play small. But if you take action, if you step into courage, if you go after your dreams even when it's messy, even when it's scary, you show them what's possible. Your transformation doesn't just belong to you. It belongs to everyone who will be inspired by it. So let me ask you, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Have you ever heard a story about someone who changed their life and it lit a fire inside you? Maybe it was a single mom who built her dream business, or someone who lost everything and started over, or someone who took a risk when everyone doubted them. Stories like that change us. They plant a seed in our minds that says, if they can do it, maybe I can too. And guess what? That's exactly what you are doing when you take action. You are creating a story that someone else will look at and say, if they can do it, so can I. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be an example of what's possible. Over the past 9 episodes, we've talked about breaking free from doubt, taking action, overcoming fear, and building momentum. But this is the final shift, realizing that you are becoming the person who inspires others. You are no longer just someone who wants to change, you are someone who takes action. You are someone who proves that it's never too late. You are someone who is building a legacy of courage. So from this moment forward, stop asking yourself, can I do this? Instead, ask yourself, what example do I want to set? Because that question will push you further than anything else. So here's your final challenge. Think of someone in your life who needs to see an example of courage, of action, of belief. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's your younger self. Maybe it's someone who hasn't even met you yet. And then, take action for them. Not just for yourself, but for the people who need to see it's possible. Because that's how change happens. That's how legacies are built. And that's how you go from waiting to leading. Your transformation is bigger than you, and it starts now. This is the end of our series, but it's just the beginning of your journey. You are no longer the person who waits. You are no longer the person who doubts. You are no longer the person who puts things off until the perfect time. You are the person who takes action, and the only thing left to do now is keep going. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. If this series helped you, share it with someone who needs it. Keep taking steps forward. And never forget, your action creates your legacy. I'll see you out there, doing the work, building the life you deserve. Until next time, keep going, keep believing, and keep leading by example.